John Pollock and John Ramdeen with you. We are heading into one of the busiest weekends of the year for mixed martial arts when you take into account the UFC doubleheader, but also a very big Bellator show in San Jose, California, headlined by lightweight champion Michael Chandler, who won the vacant title in his last outing against Patricky Pitbull Freite. He defends it against former UFC star Benson Henderson, who came into the promotion and, surprising to a lot of people, was dominated by Andrei Koreshkov, and now he gets a second opportunity at a Bellator championship. This fight, to me, even more interesting considering how well Andrei Koreshkov performed against Benson Henderson, and Michael Chandler, to me, is one of the elite fighters, period, in the world, regardless of promotion.
Yeah, well, what you have to look at is there's just great fighters all over the world. You know, the UFC happens to have the majority of those fighters, but Bellator has a slew of them because it's like, oh, you see what happens when Andrei Koreshkov literally dominates Ben Henderson. Oh, this is a different level athlete. And then you see Douglas Lima knock out Andrei Koreshkov. So I think it's very, very healthy for Bellator, especially when you think about the fact that they've just brought in Rory McDonald. So you have Douglas Lima, you have Andrei Koreshkov. Who knows, 185 pounds could be a division for Rory McDonald, but we got to go back to
the division that Melvin Manhoff should be holding the championship in. Yeah, he's right. The unofficial champion.
I know. But just the idea that Ben Henderson can do that as well, go back and forth between 170 pounds and 155 pounds with the biggest fights they can possibly make. And for him to be fighting Michael Chandler for the lightweight championship is just sensational because Ben Henderson has literally been in there with some of the best 155-pound fighters in the world, and I think he's going to bring out the best in Michael Chandler.
What do you think Michael Chandler takes from that fight at welterweight and is able to extrapolate for this fight? Because Andrei Koreshkov put a lot of pressure on Benson, put him against a cage, put him in unenviable positions, and it was a lot of Benson trying to react rather than being able to initiate.
Yeah, I don't know if Michael Chandler's going to play that game because Andrei Koreshkov was huge, and he used that physicality to his advantage in this fight. I think that Michael Chandler, it'll be all about speed and mobility, and because he's going to have to push it, because one thing that Ben Henderson is very, very, very good at, he can convince judges that he wins rounds. So a lot of people believe there's a number of fights, whether it was the Frankie fight or the Josh Thompson fight, that he wins fights that he shouldn't be winning. So he understands how to convince the judges. He uses his physicality as well. So Michael Chandler just has to press the action. He has to make it count. Going to be very difficult because Ben Henderson, one of the craftiest out there at 155 pounds, maybe in the game.
And yes, Chandler has that wrestling base, but the power this guy has. I mean, that Pitbull fight back in June, there was a fan that went home with Pitbull's jaw that he caught in the fifth row.
Yeah, that's true.
That was an incredible knockout back in June. So that's, to me, of all the fights this weekend, John, that's the one I'm most looking forward to, is that lightweight title fight. Also on the card, Michael Page, who is someone at welterweight everyone has their eyes on. He's taking on Fernando Gonzalez. And this kind of ties in as well to Kevin Ferguson Jr., Kimbo Slice's son, who's making his professional debut, first fight with Bellator. He's on the undercard, and I think you can look at Michael Page as someone that came in, very flashy style, a great personality that they have slowly brought along, and I think that's why they have opted for Kevin Ferguson Jr., putting him on the undercard, not putting him in this high-pressure situation on Spike TV, and that they're going to bring him along slowly as well, rather than just maximize this guy's interest right at his first professional fight.
Yeah, but I think they should have to. It's like, see how he performs on the undercard. If he gets a sensational knockout or he looks particularly
air it. Yes,
air it. That's what you have to do.
Completely.
But if he looks flat, if
much
he goes,
like what they did with Ed Ruth a few weeks ago and Tyrell Fortune, they were on the undercard. They weren't ton of spotlight on them, but they had spectacular wins, and then they put them on the broadcast.
And that's what it comes down to. And same with Michael Page. It's like, okay, what do we have? Do we have a star? You saw what he did against Cyborg. It's okay. This Gonzalez fight, we're getting close to 40 fights for Gonzalez. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. Karl Amasu, Mariusz Zaromskis, Karl Parisian. Now, some of those guys are past their prime, but they're name guys. So this really is a good challenge. On top of that, as I mentioned, 40 fights for Gonzalez, only been knocked out 2 times as a mixed martial arts professional. How does Michael Page win fights? He knocks you out. So I think this is a good test for Michael Page because this is a guy that I believe that the hardcore fan base and eventually the casual fan base will tune into him because of his flashy style. He's kind of like Bellator's version of Wonder Boy.
Last question. Do you think it helps or hurts the fact that you are going up against a UFC card? You are going to have people that are flipping back and forth that maybe wouldn't reserve the night just for Bellator, or would you have rather Bellator had their own night, like a Friday night prior to this doubleheader?
Yeah, I mean, I like that Bellator has their Friday nights, but if you look at some of the biggest stars, if you look at Gegard Mousasi and Uriah Hall, I think that hardcore fans know who Mousasi is, but Hall people saw on the Ultimate Fighter reality show. Bader and Little Nog, the same thing. Maybe not the biggest names. Ben Henderson, people know because he was a former UFC lightweight champion. So I think it might have been a pretty good move by Bellator.
That's going to wrap it up for us. For John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock, and enjoy Bellator from San Jose on Saturday night.